I didn't expect it to blow up this much. I know everybody says it. Thank you, everybody, for replying. I'm going to do my best to reply to all of you. Unfortunately, I have to go to bed at this point because 3:30 a.m. comes way too early in the morning. Well, there's no catching up on comments with this one. I'm glad to read that you all are able to let those emotions out. If you're going through a rough time in life, just know there's always somebody to talk to. And if you feel like there isn't, my inbox is open. Let the emotions flow. You beautiful people. Story 1. 2 years ago, my sister-in-law had twins. One of them had a congenital heart defect known as hypoplastic left heart syndrome. Her family moved in with my wife and me because we live in a city with a great hospital. Over the next 2 months, we watched him slowly die. I was one of his pallbearers and wept uncontrollably throughout the funeral. After the funeral, my wife and I sat in our empty house and cried some more. Story 2. Sometime last week, I had ankle surgery at the beginning of the week, and the lady I'm dating is taking absolute care of me. The nerve block wore off, and I was absolutely dying after scooting upstairs. I just laid there for a moment in the kitchen with her. After she helped me get up, I explained to her how I've never been treated in such a way by someone outside of my family as she has been treating and taking care of me. My ex of 6 years would have just complained the entire time, so it was and has been a bit overwhelming being treated this way. She's a keeper. Edit. Thank you all. I was not expecting my comment to blow up like this. The support really means a lot, and I'm definitely keeping her around. Story 3. When I had to put my dog down a few months ago, he was the best. Thanks for all the warm thoughts. You guys are the best. We love our furry friends, and because of that, we don't let them suffer. Story 4. When I submitted my letter of resignation in June, my old boss was a real one who looked out for me personally and professionally. I'm not a huge fan of change. I definitely got emotional going through the past 4 years. Change scares me, and the realization that I was moving on got to me. Story 5. Friday, my grandpa died the day before, and I often have trouble processing death immediately, so it usually takes 12 to 24 hours for it to really hit me. Story 6. Earlier tonight, my wife and I made love, then sat in bed discussing our early dating, how we knew in about 4 months of meeting that we were headed for marriage, but she had some things to work through first. I told her I was glad I was in the right space to be patient and understanding then, otherwise I might have missed out on an incredible woman. Then I cried, and then she cried. She commented on how she couldn't recall the last time I cried. It's been a wonderful 18 years. Story 7. A couple of hours ago, I had a moment. Not a big one, just welling up. A conversation card at a Christmas party asked what kind of charity I would start and who it would be for. I thought of something for abused kids. What bothered me, though, was the thought that so many suffer in silence and fear and may never benefit. I am a therapist, and I hear too many of those stories. Speaking of which, I watched Good Will Hunting with my wife last weekend. I had not seen it in years. Tears started streaming at the scene where Robin Williams just sits in silence. Then the scene approaches where Will breaks down in therapy, and I know what is coming. I had to leave the room and ended up in a ball on the floor. Story 8. Today, when I heard the words, "I love you, but I'm no longer in love with you," 3.5 years went down the drain, and I need to get a refund on an engagement ring. Story 9. A few hours ago. Story time. I met an amazing girl last summer while hiking. Like perfect. We became best friends almost instantly. But she told me that she wasn't ready for a relationship at the time and would rather be friends. Plus, she lived on the other side of the country, so logically it made sense. Plus, she was 2.5 years older than me and in a different stage in life. I was heartbroken but continued on and built that friendship. Later in the summer, we met a guy who fit in with our hiking group. He is amazing, don't get me wrong. Tonight I called this girl to catch up on life, and it turns out she started dating that guy in secret last summer while we were hiking. She pretty much told me that she doesn't want to maintain our friendship anymore because she was torn. That crushed me. I spent all summer suppressing my feelings for her and invested a huge amount of energy to build what I thought was a lasting friendship. Something that is rare for me. All those feelings suddenly came back when we got off the phone, and I couldn't contain it. So yeah, that's my story of how I still can't get over people even when I let down my trust barriers and allow friendships. And how a guy can easily cry. Story 10. Yesterday, a good friend of mine got very drunk and sent me a message about how we're brothers for life and that he will always be by my side. Stuff like that always gets me. Story 11. I'm about to be bawling soon because I'm at the hospital right now as my grandpa had cardiac arrest twice in the last 2 days. His kidneys are failing and now he is going fast. Edit, he just passed away. Story 12. I cried 3 times last week alone. During the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic, my mental health deteriorated completely. I literally went through a phase where I cried daily. I started seeing a therapist and things got better. Last week was my first business trip away from my comfort zone. Story 13. Today, it's hard raising 3 children on a single-parent income, along with getting a notice to vacate our rental. It just seems like it's impossible to stay on top. Story 14. Found out on Wednesday last week my dad has skin cancer, but thankfully it's not melanoma and cannot spread. When the growth is removed, he will be clear. I spent all day Wednesday crying. I live in Vancouver, and my dad is home in Ireland. I know it's not a dangerous kind, but cancer is still cancer. I just wanted to give him a hug. Filling up now just typing this. Story 15. I made a mistake, and I made my mother cry. I felt terrible about it and bought flowers and muffins to make up for it. And we both cried together when I asked for forgiveness. Story 16. Today, I am dealing with a lot of stress. I have been out of work for over 8 years due to a back injury. Financial stress is overwhelming, and I feel like a failure, even though the injury is not my fault. I am in pain every day. Being stuck in this situation, depression set in quickly. My wife divorced me about a year after my injury. She did not want to be with someone who could not be active and go on adventures. It is hard to meet new women when you cannot go out and socialize, so loneliness is difficult. I am not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I did get lucky and randomly met this amazing woman. She is a great person and a great friend, but I want more. She checks every box. I never thought I would meet someone so amazing. Bad luck strikes again, though, because she is married. So, my heart hurts from that. Life is difficult and then you die, I guess. There is a lot of other stress, but this is long enough. Story 17. Saturday night. Combination of realizing how long I've been single, thinking about how my previous relationships ended, and that my chances are getting worse as I get older. I tried finding a website where I could send myself flowers to arrive on Valentine's Day and spent an hour trying to find one that would let me send them this early. I was hoping to forget that I did it by then. Story 18. When I watched We Were Soldiers on Memorial Day in the past, when Mrs. Moore comes back to her home after delivering the first telegram and sees the pile left at her door, I always lose it. I'm a veteran, nothing big or important, but I lost friends, and that just hits hard each time I see it. Story 19. Just yesterday, I went to my dad's grave and cried because I missed him. He passed away when I was in 9th grade, so 2 years ago, from lung cancer. I regret not spending more time with him because I thought he would be there forever. Seeing people with their dads makes me a little jealous, wondering why God had to take my dad. I don't know, man. Story 20. Guess I better watch these because it's been a minute for me. Found my new plans for my days off. Sad movies and possibly a whiskey drink or some wine. Story 21. A few weeks ago, I came to the realization that I had been suffering mentally from holding in all the pain and emotional trauma for the better part of a decade, and even some from before that too. I won't get into it, but I will say that it started with a couple of tears, my whole body shaking and feeling numb. Then I just completely broke down, but it was still silent. Guys, learn to release some emotion, please. You don't want to end up losing your sanity and sense of empathy. You also don't want to break down and feel everything pouring out of you all at once. It's a terrible, helpless feeling. Story 22. Probably last week, I was having a club meeting at my university. The club advisor commented on the gender ratio since most of the club members are women. One member made a comment, asking what I am doing there and why I am part of the club, implying that I don't belong there. Another one followed up, saying that she forgets I am part of the club. Many of the members chuckled at the comments. I felt so heartbroken and so excluded, like I don't matter. It's particularly difficult because I have been trying to make meaningful relationships to fight my anxiety and depression. I came home that night and let out tears. Story 23. This week, I had a dog for 6 months. He was the best thing ever. He was my best friend. He was getting big, or even too big for me, so my dad, who loved the dog, had to send it to a friend on a farm. I went there only once, and he was really big. When he saw me, he ran the fastest I had ever seen him. That was 6 to 8 months ago, and I really miss him. When I'm sad, I think of him. I'm 13, and his name is Rudy. Story 24. Just a few days ago, my dad died about 3 years ago, and my mom died about 4 months ago. 3 things happened in quick succession a few days ago that pushed me over the edge. First, we put up our Christmas tree. It is a tree I inherited, along with some of the ornaments that were my parents'. Most went to my siblings. Second was that the check for my portion of the sale of my parents' house came in the mail. Surprisingly, that brought profound sadness. Then I learned that the new family moved into my parents' house, closing that chapter of my life forever. That is when I lost it. Body-heaving sobs. This time of year is going to be rough. We always had great Christmases together, and it is really hard to get into it with them gone. Story 25. A week ago, I watched Lord of the Rings for 12 hours. I cried so much that my face burned. My girlfriend probably thinks I'm an idiot, but whatever. There's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. Story 26. Last night, it hit me again that this pandemic really crushed me. I'm 20 and started university 2 weeks before lockdown started. I didn't live on campus, so I didn't make any friends. I'm starting my 3rd year in a few months. I've gotten a lot better after basically being crazy for a year or so. But some things are still really hard, and socializing is one of them. It makes me sad that I can't really connect to people anymore or be myself. Last night was pretty dire, and I just couldn't stop weeping. Curled up with my cat, which definitely improved things. Love you all. Go to therapy and whatnot. Story 27. In front of other people? I genuinely don't remember. By myself in my bedroom? Back in October, I randomly smacked myself with the thought that there's going to be a day I see all my friends for the last time. Story 28. Today, this morning I found my roommate lifeless in bed. I called emergency services and started resuscitation, but it didn't help. Paramedics and officers on the scene couldn't do anything either and declared her deceased. She died in her sleep from an epileptic seizure. Even before I started resuscitation, I knew the outcome already. Her body was discolored, purplish, and I saw that her stomach was slightly bloated. This happened about 3 hours ago, so I'm still in disbelief. Story 29. Feels weird writing it, but 20 years ago when I was kicked out of my house, I was a homeless kid and this family took me in. They had this large classical music collection, and I remember putting on a Mozart album, and something about it just made me bawl uncontrollably. Story 30. Like 6 years ago, I learned that a freshman I ran cross-country with was assigned to run with me, so I was teaching, and we got to know each other through the 10-mile runs. One day, I heard that he ended his life, and that broke me because I felt so useless. Since then, nothing has really made me cry. Not my marriage, not my divorce, not my boot camp graduation. I get close sometimes, but I can stop it pretty well at this stage in life. I believe I have just learned to shut down that emotion. I'm aware of how bad that is, but I just don't have time to cry about my life. Story 31. I had to put my dog down, and I took him alone. My wife stayed home with our son. It was the first time I cried in years, and it wasn't until I was walking out of the room knowing he wasn't coming back with me. I still won't talk about it with anyone in real life. Story 32. I had to resuscitate my grandmother a couple of months ago after she had a seizure and stopped breathing. It was the most stressful situation I've ever been in. Trying to perform cardiopulmonary resuscitation while managing my kids was overwhelming. I couldn't really cry after the ambulance came and took her since I was alone with my kids at the time. I just got stuck with that mentality of having to keep it together for them, which led me to repress those feelings. After her hospital stay, she just wasn't the same person and had fallen into a deep depression that eventually led to her moving to some kind of mental ward. I just cried after she left, realizing that my grandmother, with whom I've always cooked and spent time, was probably gone forever. This Thanksgiving was difficult without having her in the kitchen with me, and I'm sure Christmas will be the same. Story 33. Just before the pandemic started, my mom took her own life. Before then, I rarely cried. Since then, a lot. And I get teary-eyed over so much now, good and bad. I never fully understood the impact suicide has on a person and an entire family. Just love everyone as hard as you can. Story 34. About 3 days ago, I was watching the news report on the young boy murdered by his stepmother in the United Kingdom. I have never cried at the news before. The recorded audio of him shouting, "Why does nobody love me?" was what did it. Tragic. Story 35. I wept pretty hard when my best friend sent me a text after she got out of rehabilitation, which basically said she wishes she never met me and hopes to never see me again. It was so unexpected. We spent every day together for the last 2 years. She is the most beautiful woman I have ever known. I wish I could know why, but I have accepted I probably will not ever get answers. Story 36. Probably a month or so ago, we had to put one of our dogs to sleep this spring. She had terminal cancer. We bought her a little more time after the diagnosis and had a few good months, but one morning we knew she'd taken that last turn for the worse. So, rather than drag things out, we made the hard call. I cried, fully ugly cried most of that morning. I cried while we held her and petted her as she closed her eyes for the last time. I cried so many times over the next few days, then a little less frequently as days turned to weeks, then less as weeks turned to months. And I still tear up or even cry, remembering and missing her.